In that once bustling city, filled with people and the sound of cars, silence now reigned everywhere. Not a single human or living creature could be heard in the distance. All around, there was only devastation. Inside a deserted store, a family was gathering their belongings, holding back their breath. Something, an invisible fear, had forced them to remain completely silent. They communicated only through gestures. The couple, Lee and Evelyn, had collected all the essentials before dusk and were ready to return home. Their 4-year-old son, Bo, picked up a toy rocket from the shelf. Everyone froze in terror because the battery-powered rocket could make noise if switched on. Lee carefully took the rocket from Bo and removed its batteries. Then, they all left for home. Their eldest daughter, Reagan, had been deaf since childhood, but she lovingly looked after Bo. She noticed his deep disappointment at losing the toy. Wanting to comfort him, Reagan handed Bo the empty rocket before leaving the store. But innocent Bo secretly picked up the batteries too. Unaware of this, Lee and Evelyn, along with the children, walked in a line toward home. They moved barefoot to avoid making a sound. Their eldest son, Marcus, was sick, so Lee carried him in his arms while little Bo walked behind. Suddenly, Bo inserted the batteries into the rocket and turned it on. The toy began playing music. Since Reagan couldn't hear, she didn't notice. But Lee and Evelyn instantly froze in fear. In that moment, a terrifying creature burst out of the dense forest, racing toward Bo at the speed of a bullet. Dropping Marcus behind, Lee ran toward Bo with all his might. But before he could reach him, the creature snatched Bo away and vanished. Shocked, Lee and Evelyn could do nothing but shed silent tears. What was that ferocious creature that attacked at the slightest sound? Exactly 79 days earlier, a meteorite had fallen in Mexico. From it, terrifying alien creatures had spread across the earth. These monsters were completely blind, but their sense of hearing was so sharp they could detect the faintest vibration in the air. Even a heavy breath was enough to draw them, and they would strike at bullet speed to kill. Their skin was tougher than iron, acting like armor that made them immune to bullets and even bomb blasts. They multiplied across Earth in no time, wiping out almost all humans and animals. The only way to survive was to remain completely silent. Because of this, Lee and Evelyn, along with their children, had managed to stay alive. But one moment of carelessness had cost them their son. Now, a year had passed since that tragic day. Lee and Evelyn tried to move on for the sake of their 2 surviving children. To fill the void left by Bo, they decided to bring another life into the world. Evelyn was now 9 months pregnant and close to giving birth. They had already prepared everything to protect the baby. As soon as the child was born, they planned to place an oxygen mask on the newborn and keep it inside a soundproof box so the cries wouldn't be heard. The family lived in a farmhouse deep in the forest, surviving through farming. After Bo's death, Lee became more cautious. He installed CCTV cameras all around their home and made it more secure. Inside the house, he spread sand on the floor and stairs to silence the creaking of wood beneath their feet. Lee also devoted himself to studying the alien creatures. He discovered that 3 of them roamed in their area and began searching for their weaknesses. He even sent SOS signals through radio, both locally and abroad, but received no response. To survive these creatures, one had to be alert to every sound. But since Reagan was deaf, her situation posed a great challenge. Lee worked tirelessly to help her. Reagan wore a cochlear implant hearing aid, one part connected to the auditory nerves inside her skull, and the other part placed outside whenever needed. When sound occurred, the device sent signals directly to her auditory nerves, allowing her to sense where the sound was coming from. However, Reagan's device only worked on loud noises, so Lee modified it and increased its frequency, allowing her to hear even the faintest sounds. Still, Reagan blamed herself for her brother's death. She believed that if she hadn't given him the toy rocket that day, he would still be alive. Now, Reagan wanted to prove herself by helping her father with his work. But since the accident, Lee hadn't given Reagan any responsibility. He wouldn't even let her into his CCTV room, as it contained radios, microphones, and speakers. If Reagan had accidentally turned on a sound-emitting device, it could have put everyone's lives in danger. Reagan was angry with her father for this. One day, Lee was going to the river to catch fish with his son, Marcus. Reagan begged to go with them, but Lee refused. He told her to stay home and help her mother. Frustrated, Reagan packed her bag and left on her own. Evelyn was now completely alone at home. Sometime later, while carrying laundry from the basement, Evelyn was heading upstairs with a sack when a nail caught in it. The sharp nail was pulled upright, sticking out on the stairs where they often stepped, but Evelyn didn't notice it. Meanwhile, heartbroken Reagan went to her brother's grave. Back at home, Evelyn picked up a picture of her deceased son and quietly wept in his memory. Suddenly she went into labor. The time had come for her delivery. Holding the photo frame tightly, she quickly hurried toward the basement so she could turn on the red lights outside, signaling her family for help. But in her haste to go down the stairs, Evelyn stepped on the sharp nail. The photo frame slipped from her hand, crashing loudly to the floor and shattering. Evelyn was in terrible pain, but she couldn't even scream. Struggling, she pulled her foot off the nail and limped to the basement, turning on the switch that lit up the emergency red lights outside. As she started back upstairs, Evelyn froze in horror. Hearing the crash of the photo frame, an alien creature had entered the house. Trembling with fear, she hid behind a shelf. At the same time, Lee returned from fishing with Marcus. Seeing the red lights flashing, he immediately rushed toward the house. In the basement, Evelyn grabbed a timer, set it for a few seconds, placed it in a corner, and quickly hid in another. Moments later, sensing movement, the creature entered the basement. It was dangerously close to Evelyn. Despite her labor pains, she stood there silently, trying to muffle even her breathing. Suddenly, the timer rang. Distracted, the creature darted toward the sound. Evelyn seized the chance and ran out of the basement, but just as she was about to exit the main door, she saw another creature patrolling outside. Evelyn immediately pressed herself against the wall for cover. It felt as though a mountain of troubles had fallen upon her. Meanwhile, Lee, hiding with Marcus in another house, grew restless at the terrifying sight. He handed Marcus a flashlight and told him to quickly light the fireworks they had set up far away. Frightened but determined, Marcus ran to ignite them, while Lee began loading his gun. Back in the house, Evelyn fled to the upstairs bathroom and hid in the bathtub. Now, it had become nearly impossible for her to endure the labor. She was about to give birth, but the creature had already followed the sound of her sobs and crept near the bathroom. Escape seemed impossible. Just then, Marcus set off the fireworks, sending loud explosions into the sky. Hearing the blasts, the creatures rushed toward the noise. Evelyn, overwhelmed by pain, screamed loudly. At that moment, Lee entered the house with his gun. He noticed bloodstains on the stairs leading up to the bathroom. Following them, he reached the bathroom and froze. The tub was covered in blood. Believing Evelyn had been killed, Lee broke down crying. But then, a hand pressed against the shower glass. It was Evelyn, still alive. Brave Evelyn had endured the impossible and given birth to a son. Relief washed over Lee. Without wasting a moment, he carried Evelyn and the baby to another house. In its basement, they had built a soundproof box for the newborn. But before they could reach it, the baby began to cry. The sound immediately drew a creature toward them. Lee rushed into the basement, blocking the door with a thick mattress. He quickly placed an oxygen mask on the baby and locked him inside the box, muffling the sound of his cries. Finally, Lee breathed a sigh of relief. Meanwhile, Reagan was on her way home when she noticed a light flickering in the fields. She stared at it, unaware that a creature had been tracking her. Using echolocation, the monsters emitted sound waves from their mouths, bouncing them back with the armor in their skulls to detect their surroundings. The creature drew closer and was just behind Reagan when suddenly, a sharp, high-pitched sound began screeching from her hearing aid. The creature writhed in pain, then fled. Reagan also heard the strange sound, but it stopped the moment the creature fled. She couldn't understand what had just happened to her. Leaving the thought aside, she followed the flickering light into the bushes. There, she found a flashlight lying near a tractor. As she reached to pick it up, someone suddenly grabbed her hand. It was Marcus, trembling with fear, hiding under the tractor. Seeing his sister, Marcus felt a wave of relief. Meanwhile, after settling Evelyn to rest in the basement, Lee came out to search for his children. The alien creature had already left, but before going, it had caused chaos inside the house, bursting a water pipe and filling a tub. Lee didn't pay much attention to it and hurried into the fields to look for Marcus and Reagan. By now, the tub had overflowed, and water was pouring down into the basement. Marcus and Reagan, on the other hand, were hiding on top of a grain tank, anxiously waiting for their father. Lee was desperately searching for them too. Sometime later, Evelyn suddenly woke up and was horrified to see the basement completely flooded. Water was pouring down from above like a waterfall. Her eyes darted toward the baby's box, but it was open, and no sound came from inside. Panicked, She tried to get up, and then spotted an alien creature lurking in a dark corner. It looked as if it was eating something. Fear gripped her, but without caring for her own safety, she immediately rushed toward the box. By then, the water had risen to her waist. Suddenly, the creature dived into the water. Evelyn opened the box and was relieved to see her baby safe. Luckily, he hadn't made a sound, which had saved his life. Evelyn held him tightly and stood silently in a corner. The creature loomed near her like death itself. If the baby made even the slightest cry, their end was certain. Meanwhile, Reagan was tired of waiting for her father and decided to go home alone. Seeing this, Marcus hurried to stop her. But as he stepped onto the grain bin's door, it gave way. He fell straight into the tank. The loud clanging of the iron door instantly drew the creature near Evelyn, who rushed toward the new sound at lightning speed. Evelyn narrowly escaped, but Marcus was now in grave danger. The tank full of corn was like quicksand. Marcus struggled desperately, but the more he moved, the deeper he sank. Just then, one of the tank's doors broke and fell near him, pushing him further down. The noise echoed across the fields, and the creature came charging toward the tank at bullet speed. Seeing this, Lee realized his children were in danger. Meanwhile, Reagan, seeing Marcus drowning, jumped into the corn and pushed the door toward him. Using it as support, Marcus managed to climb out, but now Reagan was sinking deep into the corn. Marcus frantically reached down, searching for her. At last, he found her hand, and with all his strength, pulled her out. They had barely escaped one danger, but the commotion made it impossible to avoid the creature. The next moment, it leapt into the tank. Reagan and Marcus quickly flipped the iron door over themselves for cover, but the creature shredded it with its claws. Just as it was about to attack, a sharp, high-pitched sound screeched from Reagan's hearing aid, stabbing into the creature's ears like needles. Writhing in pain, the monster tore open the steel tank and fled. Reagan and Marcus climbed out of the tank, shaken but alive. Lee, who had been searching frantically, finally found them. Relief washed over him at the sight of his children safe. Meanwhile, Evelyn was watching everything through the CCTV. Lee suddenly sensed the creature nearby. Acting quickly, he sent the children toward the car parked in front. Grabbing an axe from a shed, he scanned the surroundings, ready for what was to come. Unfortunately, the creature was already on top of the shed. Before Lee could strike back, it swatted him away with its claws. Seeing this, Marcus screamed in terror, instantly alerting the monster. The creature began to approach them. Just then, a piercing sound burst from Reagan's hearing aid. The noise was deafening to her, so she quickly switched it off. But that was her biggest mistake. The device emitted high-frequency sound waves, inaudible to humans, but unbearable to these creatures. That sound was their weakness. By turning it off, Reagan had unknowingly invited her own death. The next moment, the creature leapt onto the car, clawing to reach Reagan and Marcus. Meanwhile, Lee regained consciousness, though badly injured. Seeing his children cornered, his heart grew numb. He knew there was only one way to save them. Through tears, he gestured to his children that he loved them deeply. Then, in the next instant, he let out a loud scream. The creature immediately turned toward Lee and, in a single blow, tore him apart. By sacrificing himself, he had saved his children. Marcus and Reagan managed to start the car just in time and drove home. Evelyn hugged them tightly the moment she saw them. She had already witnessed Lee's death through the CCTV cameras, but she couldn't allow herself to break down. Not now. Suddenly, Evelyn sensed another creature approaching. She quickly led the children into the basement, where the CCTV monitors were kept. Handing her newborn baby to Marcus, she armed herself with a shotgun and stood guard. Moments later, the monster entered the basement, clawing wildly at every little sound. Evelyn knew her bullets would do nothing against its armored skin. Death felt inevitable. At that moment, Reagan's eyes fell on her father's research. She realized the creatures were extremely sensitive to sound. It clicked. Her hearing aid's high-frequency waves were what had driven the creatures away before. Wasting no time, Reagan switched the device back on. The shrill waves erupted, making the monster writhe in agony as if needles were piercing its entire body. The sound stung Reagan's ears too, but she endured it. Then she spotted a microphone. Thinking quickly, she held her hearing aid to it, amplifying the signal. The creature screeched in unbearable pain. Its armored skull plates began to peel open on their own. In that split second, Evelyn took aim and fired a shotgun blast straight into its exposed mouth. The creature's head shattered, and it finally collapsed, dead. But the fight wasn't over. The sound of the gunshot had drawn the other two monsters in the area straight toward them. Evelyn and Reagan, however, no longer felt helpless. They had uncovered the creature's weakness. Fear turned to fury, and in their eyes burned only the fire of revenge. Reagan cranked up the speaker's volume and gripped the microphone tightly. Evelyn reloaded her gun and stood ready. Now it was their turn to fight back. And with that, this part of the film ends. Friends, if you liked this video and got lost in the story while watching, please subscribe to support us, so we can keep bringing you more videos like this. Thanks for watching.